Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis news from April 10th to the 16th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. We're going to start with this one from New Cannabis Ventures, as Michigan cannabis sales did jump back up in March, which we love to see. And while I posted this in the comments of my Wednesday video, just wanted to recap, as Michigan cannabis sales climbed 15.4% in March from the shorter month of February, reaching 249.7 million. Another record, which we love to see. On a per day basis, sales increased, I believe it's 4.26%, but this is a typo, so I'm not exactly sure. While the growth of 62.9% from a year ago was the highest over the 15 months. And so looking year over year from March 2022 up to here, we love to see it, highlighting there's a lot of cash in Michigan, and people are still voting for legal cannabis with their dollars when given the chance. And considering it's a very competitive market with no licensing caps, we love to see that people are still voting for legal cannabis when there's enough dispensaries out there for people to access so they're not going to the black market. And while the Michigan Cannabis Regulatory Agency breaks out sales by medical and adult use, this is very interesting because it's unlike what we saw with Connecticut, one of the few markets where medical sales actually outpace rec sales, whereas Michigan actually went with the exact opposite approach, focusing on equal access to opportunity and opening as many legal outlets as possible. And because of that, we see medical sales fall 69.3% from a year ago to just 9.8 million, down 1.9% sequentially, and adult use sales expanding 97.9% year over year, taking up all of the sales, 293.9 million, up 16% sequentially. So quite the difference. Do you think that's a problem, seeing medical sales dip so much, or are you in the same view as me, whereas cannabis itself is a medicine, and so if people can get it through rec dispensaries, they're just going to go get what they like and what they know works for themselves. And so obviously more breakdown here if you wanted to take a look, and then the last bit down here looking at the wholesale pricing, full link below in the description if you wanted to check it out. But with that, wanted to share this interesting visual from Scott R. Grossman. So take from this visual what you will, but found it relevant as it highlights rec sales are up 98% year over year, despite a 50% drawdown in pricing. So very impressive. I'm not going to try to pretend like I know exactly what his lingo is referring to here, but highlights that despite a 50% drawdown, the volume is increasing because Americans want to vote for legal cannabis with their dollars if they can. And so with that, on to Florida Office of Medical Cannabis Use. Looking at this past week, we can see the number of dispensary locations approved from the week of April 10th to the 14th. One for Curaleaf in Boca Raton. Green Dragon opened 2 in Madison and Orlando, and then Sunnyside opened 1 in Miami. Sunnyside backed by Cresco Labs, Curaleaf obviously backed by Curaleaf, and I believe Curaleaf opened another one. I might have missed a recent press release, but I'll put it in the comments. I think they might have opened 2 new ones in Florida this past week, despite some of the other buzz that we'll get to about Curaleaf. But with that, qualified patient counts increased up to 807,438, which represents an increase of 1,947 patients week over week. And if we scroll down to dispensations for April 7th to the 13th, we can see all the MSOs that operate in the state, the number of active dispensaries they have, and then the number of milligrams of THC, milligrams of CBD, and ounces of smokable flower sold just this past week from the 7th to the 13th. So strong sales across the board. And of course, this data is here, link in the description, but I will also put some updated comp sheets either from Pierre Gilles or from the CannAsSource.io in the comments tomorrow once I end up posting the video. And so with that, from Fortune, now, we are anticipating strong sales for next week for 420, and while we have not had any projections come out from like data companies such as Curna yet, just sharing this from Fortune, is cannabis retail sales to surpass 33.5 billion overall in 2023. Topping chocolate, eggs, and craft beer. And so just worth noting that we are expecting some big numbers next week, as obviously year over year numbers are expected to increase. And I do not have access behind this paywall, but just wanted to share this from Fortune as it was relevant for what we're going to be recapping next week. And so with that, from Marijuana Moment, top House Democrat and Republican congressman file bill to prepare for federal cannabis legalization. Here we go again. And while we're not going to get our hopes up because this is not the first time we've been promised this, it's at least nice to see this effort coming from more members of Congress than not, as Rep. Dave Joyce and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries introduced the Preparing Regulators Effectively for a Post-Prohibition Adult Use Regulated Environment Act on Thursday. And so the incremental reform would direct the AG to create a commission charged with making recommendations on a regulatory system for cannabis that models what's currently in place for alcohol. And so do you find this is a better approach, descheduling it and treating it like alcohol as opposed to rescheduling it and keeping it under government control? definitely think this would be a better and more common sense approach. So you can pause to read a little bit more and a little bit more here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, the full link will be in the description if you wanted to pull it up. But interestingly enough, with that, Marijuana Moment shares as Washington State bill to allow interstate cannabis commerce is officially heading to the governor's desk. So while we love to hear this, it is interesting to note that Oregon was the first state to pass an interstate commerce bill in 2019. California then followed last year by doing this, and so now Washington State is the third state to do this. And it's worth noting that the measure would allow the governor to enter into agreement with other legal cannabis states pending a federal policy change. So we need something to happen at the federal level first before these can go into effect. But 3 states are leading the charge. So is there some sort of foreshadowing? I don't know, but we'd love to see it, as this would allow for interstate transfer of cannabis or a federal Justice Department opinion allowing or tolerating cannabis commerce across state lines. Could this be a revamped Cole Memo 2.0? We'll obviously have to wait and see, but we would love that to be the case. And so with that, Marijuana Moment as well, sharing that the Hawaii Attorney General apparently now supports cannabis legalization. And so while Hawaii was a potential 2023 reform state, they decided not to do that. But now the new AG, or maybe not the new AG, but the AG is pledging to work to enact reform next year. So Hawaii is just going to be a 2024 story. While we would love to see them get it done in 2023, they'll kick the can next year, and hopefully they will fall in line with more states that do end up reforming their laws. But with that, thanks Tom Engel for sharing that. Delaware Governor John Carney faces April 22nd and 26th deadlines to act on a pair of complementary cannabis legalization and regulation bills now that they have been formally transferred to his desk, or transmitted to his desk. Now, apparently, the Delaware governor was going to veto this, but from my understanding, the lawmakers passed this legislation because they know they had the votes to override the veto. So he vetoed the measure to legalize cannabis last year. They didn't have the votes to override, but from my understanding, they claim that they do have the votes to override this time. So if he vetoes it, maybe they'll be able to override it. We don't know, but we'll update you once that gets done. And so thank you, Joe Greiser, for sharing this timely story. I'm not sure if this is a good thing, though, because when Mitch leaves, could his replacement be that much worse? But cannabis rally coming up. Although we'd love to see it, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Joe, as the truth is, thank you, Dusko Jankovic, for relaying it down here. His replacement will have the same stance on cannabis. The problem lies with Booker and Schumer, as it always has. And so at least sources can confirm they're preparing for his retirement. And maybe after his serious fall and hospitalization, he's pondered a little bit and realized he's not turtly enough for the Turtle Club after all this time. Turtle. More on the full story down here if you wanted to read this. But to the big news story of the week, we've got a bunch of different stories sort of piecing together what happened. But Cannabis Biz Times, first one, big. Curaleaf's adult use licenses in New Jersey were not renewed for 2 dispensaries and the company's manufacturing and cultivation facilities by New Jersey CRC regulators. Adult use sales in Belmar and Edgewater Park will come to a halt because of this. And so more from Cannabis Business Times, link in the description. But so with that, MJ Stock Trader reviews basically what happened. And so we'll start with this Dales Report video. Reviewed the New Jersey CRC regulatory meeting. One of the chair, Diana Hianu, big hangups regarding Curaleaf license infraction was the abrupt closure of Belmar, which only happened last month. However, Curaleaf made diligent attempts to mitigate the job impact. And so you be the judge. Let's play this clip here.
There have been some concerns raised about the certification, the accuracy of the certification materials that were provided by Curaleaf, I think one question that I have, putting that aside for a moment, because I think Commissioner Del Cid-Coso touched on it. Have any Curaleaf employees been laid off from their employment as of today?
Are you speaking specifically with respect to Belmar, I presume, or
anywhere, across any of the facilities, the Curaleaf facilities
in the state
currently operational?
in the state, in New Jersey?
Yes.
In Belmar, every employee who was impacted or would be impacted by that reduction was offered another position if they were eligible for that. So all employees, less 5 who were not eligible because of their job performance and other issues, were given those offers and have taken them where they saw fit to do so.
So that means that there was a reduction of the workforce already?
Well, again, they were reassigned to other facilities. So we certainly are obviously have reduced Belmar, right? And I don't know that's necessarily a permanent thing. I mean, we'll see what happens as the market continues to mature in New Jersey and hopefully more dispensaries like today we saw get up and running.
The whole fucking point.
Picks up demand. But
if you don't have those dispensaries, what's the point of having all that extra cultivation? That's why they just shut it down. But now New Jersey wants to shut them down and their legal stores, making even less demand.
In the meantime, yes, those
less supply.
Who were eligible have been reassigned to other Curaleaf facilities.
Can't make this shit up.
How much? When were those employees notified of a reduction?
Last month.
this month. Okay.
After watching this clip, what do you think? Do you think the CRC is justified in shutting down all of their New Jersey operations, or do you think the reaction is a bit much and maybe made out of incompetence or resentment? Because if we recap, essentially New Jersey Canna regulators aren't happy that Curaleaf reassigned all but 5 employees, all because the regulators wouldn't open enough dispensaries to properly supply the demand, and so to punish Curaleaf, they didn't renew their license, which could put 500 people out of work in New Jersey that work for Curaleaf and cost the state tens of millions in taxes. But the Dems are better for cannabis. Like, you literally cannot make this shit up. Or should I say the Demco rats are better for cannabis? That's got to be a typo. And while this sounds really bad for Curaleaf, just want to let you know that we have BoJo's rebuttal teed up. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I do invite you to listen to it, especially if you're a Curaleaf investor. It'll make you feel better about the situation because he does believe they're going to have a solution by April 21st, as it's better to come together, communicate, and solve this as opposed to, making massive lawsuits about it and blowing this up. And so with that, this is as of April 13th, so before BoJo's rebuttal, but this is just at least what Stifel has to say on the situation, as Curaleaf having major issues in New York. Looks like they didn't get their rec license renewed because they wound down a facility before notifying the regulators. And so again, obviously better to communicate than pissing off the regulators, or the regulators pissing off Curaleaf, which they continue to do back and forth. So again, take this though with a grain of salt. Well, I just wanted to share this one from Deborah Borchardt. We have an updated story on Curaleaf from Green Market Report with more details on the New Jersey meeting with Adam S. Jackson. So just leaving this here if you wanted to grab the link in the description. But stores could close as soon as April 2023 if there's no solution that they come to. And so with that, at least this is Curaleaf's press release. Curaleaf comments on New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission's board decision. Today's unprecedented action by the New Jersey CRC, which overrode the commission's own staff recommendation that our adult use licenses be renewed, is very disappointing. And so again, it just leads me to believe that it's incompetence or resentment, especially if they override their own staff recommendation. So you can pause to read this little bit, but then also I do recommend you grab the link in the description because he talks about New Jersey and how it's really not a big deal, and they're likely going to have this, they're likely going to be able to continue in the state. Now again, that's BoJo saying what he wants to happen. We're going to have to wait and see, but also a lot of details on their plans in Germany in this, so I would just really recommend tuning in if you're either a Curaleaf holder or if you're interested. And so with that, thank you, Sam Reisman, for sharing this. New York cannabis regulators are being sued by multi-state operators, and they might as well do the same thing in New Jersey after the shit that they recently just tried to pull. For the slow rollout of the retail market, have until May 19th to respond to the lawsuit. So nice to get a date finally, a little over a month, where we expect to hear back from the regulators in New York, whether they're going to come to an agreement in the near term and settle and, help expand the market sooner than later, which would be more beneficial, or if they're going to take on the court case and eventually probably lose in the long run, because they have been very un-American in this slow rollout, and obviously the MSOs would have the upper hand in that most likely. But also wanted to share this interesting one from MJ Stock Trader, so thank you for the summary again, as he does a great job explaining this better than I probably could have. But Jungle Java highlighting Canopy Growth announces refinancing of $100 million of debt due 2023, but pay attention, 4.25% interest on a cannabis company that has horrible margins, steep declining revenue, and very little future total addressable market, especially in Canada. So again, thanks to Daddy Constellation Brands probably in the background that they can get this low of a rate. But people say safe banking doesn't do much, but that is foolish when you see US operators with strong margins getting 15% loans, and then a Canadian LP burning hundreds of millions a year, billions in the past few years, getting 4.25%. Further reiterating just how important SAFE is for these MSOs. And keep in mind, it was only about a month and a half ago that we heard that Sherrod Brown, Senate Banking Chairman, was going to introduce SAFE, but because of Silicon Valley and then the April break, it was going to be pushed until after that. So it's possible it can still come. I personally believe SAFE is a win-out-if scenario, but I can't speak for you. I can only tell you what I'm doing. And so this is not advice. Plan accordingly for your own situation, but still possible that it will come based on all the rumors and, of course, the necessity for the industry that needs it. But with that, MJ Biz Daily sharing, as cannabis industry jobs dipped by 2% in 2022, report shows, would this be a different story if New Jersey and New York even allowed 100 dispensaries? Yes, it'd be a much different story. If they allowed hundreds, a way different story, right? And so just highlighting though, sadly, this is what has happened because of how things have rolled out in the last few years. So I recommend you can pause to read this little snippet if you're interested. And then more down here to pause to read. Otherwise, full link in the description. But hey, 2%. And so with that, some interesting studies. This one from Tom Ulanowski. As U.S. study finds significant discrepancies between labeled and actual THC content in legal cannabis products. Are we surprised? Not really. And is there any solution to this? I would imagine it's just being honest and having integrity and not exaggerating. So let's try and normalize this industry first, get it accepted, and then you can try and get greedy and break the rules in your own ways. But this comes as most flowers test at 15 to 20% THC, but labels in both U.S. and Canada often claim 30 to 35%. And obviously, accurate labeling is crucial for consumer trust. Hopefully, as this gets exposed, it forces operators to head more in the truthful direction as opposed to exaggerating. But more on this in the link in the description if you're interested. While Amir England shares this new paper, but increases in co-use of cannabis and alcohol following cannabis legalization in Canada was apparently unrelated to legalization. The increase was driven by increased cannabis use regardless of its legal status. So highlighting why we should never be criminalizing in the first place and why having an adult use market and regulating it makes more sense, because people are going to consume it anyways. And at least another study just points out that Canada and states in the US that legalized first seem to have been making the common sense approaches versus states that have still yet to reform their laws. While Tom Engel shares this one, a USDA study found that cows fed with highly nutritious hemp seed cake have very low levels of THC and CBD in their meat, of course, because the female cannabis plant is the medicinal one. The male plant is the hemp and industrial one. And again, it's just the funny thing where people look at medical cannabis different than rec. It's the same medicine. But an official said it would be very difficult for someone to consume enough beef to exceed dietary cannabinoid exposure guidelines, which is likely true. But imagine that they start feeding cows with very healthy hemp seed, and we, sub-level get stoned on CBD through the food that we eat. That's one way to potentially help solve the mental health crisis we have going on. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know if that's even possible or that would even go into play, but interesting study nonetheless, because we do know hemp seed is the most nutritious seed in all of the seed kingdom, from my understanding as well. And so with that, from the Irish Times, the study published in the European Journal of Public Health, and of course all these studies, links will be in the description, finds a surprising lack of support for rec cannabis among younger people, ages 15 to 24, even though they are more likely to use the drug than older adults. And I do find this interesting because Ireland hasn't legalized yet, but we do find that in Canada and states that have legalized, youth use goes down. Why? Well, when something's not illegal anymore, when you're a young kid, the appeal goes away. It's not as cool if it's not legal. And I just thought it was interesting that this is also sort of the view that younger people have towards cannabis, even in countries that have yet to legalize. And so more on this below, of course, but support for allowing cannabis is low but increasing. At least that is in Ireland for now. With that, Czech Republic's plans to legalize cannabis, a little bit more details have been unveiled. You can buy up to 5 grams per day, but register in a database first. And so a bit more here if you wanted to pause to read and learn about what the Czech Republic plans for their pilot program, of course, or the link will be in the description. So you can pause to read this a little bit for some more details. And then pause to read. But do you agree that the government's plans to regulate the recreational cannabis market? Yes, legalization is the way forward. 92% of those in Czech Republic do agree. And so that's promising. A little bit more here if you wanted to pause to read. And so with that, majority in Finland favor cannabis decriminalization, THL survey finds. And so while it's positive that the majority of Finlandians don't believe people should be criminalized, they probably don't realize that without an adult use legal market and regulated, that it just allows the black market to proliferate. And so obviously you want to take a step in the right direction, decriminalize first, and then maybe introduce the market, but nonetheless highlighting another country seeing the benefits of ending common sense drug prohibition. For the first time in the survey's 30-year history, more people said that they think using cannabis regularly is not as risky as weekly binge drinking. Hey, what do you know? The people in Finland know what's up. And so I'm just going to leave it here. You can pause to read otherwise. Full link is in the description. And so last few ones, Earth Day means 420. As studies suggest, hemp could save the planet. We do know in many ways it can, especially if you happen to think that CO2 is the bad guy. Well, good news for you. No plant in the world is better at sucking up CO2 out of the air than cannabis. Hence why we should have a bunch of cannabis fields sucking up CO2, and then we can burn that for biofuel. Another, alternative. But I do think a more realistic title would just be how cannabis or hemp has been proven to be more beneficial and sustainable than many other products we currently use, hence, making more of an argument. But as I digress, we've been through this many times. But as we know, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, the cannabis plant is multifaceted and can be used for a numerous number of things. I do invite you to grab the link in the description because there are many ways that hemp can in fact help. Well, lastly, I haven't watched this one yet, but it popped up on my radar this morning, so just figured I would share it. Breaking down debts and future of top 6 MSOs from the Trade to Black podcast from the Dales Report. And so just wanted to share what they touch on: Cresco Labs current debt position, Curaleaf debt position, GTI current debt position, Trulieve, Air Wellness, a few other situations related to cannabis like West Coast brands entering the Florida market, but then other stuff outside of cannabis not related as well. So if you wanted to tune in, of course, the link will be in the description, but just figured I would share this. I plan to listen to it today because I do like to obviously take in as much info as I can to try and make the best educated decisions. And obviously, since I've been holding bags for a long time, all I can really do is wait. But the good thing is I don't need the money, so I'm not going to sell. And I do believe that this is still a when not if scenario. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of today's video. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.